Greetings to everyone. Hope you all are hale and hearty. And I'm Ilusata Priyadarshini God, an undergraduate from MBM Engineering College, Jodhpur. And in this module, we're going to be discussing the solutions to sample paper number 5, part 2, that is for question number 6 to question number 10. And we're going to be targeting class 9. So without any further ado, let's get started. So the first question of the module says, state 2 causes and 2 effects for the depletion of the ozone layer. Now, before we actually try to understand the causes and effects of the depletion of the ozone layer, we're first going to have a close look at what ozone layer is. So if say this is your Mother Earth, and this Earth is surrounded by different layers of atmospheres which have different combinations of different sorts of gases and different set of constituents are present in these layers, right? So every layer is different from the other. So when this is your Earth, the nearest to the Earth is your troposphere, and then after troposphere you have a stratosphere, right? Stratosphere, and then you have a mesosphere, and after that you have two more layers. Of one was your thermosphere, and one is your exosphere. And after exosphere, you have your blank space or your empty space, which is there. So this is the basic structure of the atmosphere around the Earth. The nearest layer is your troposphere. Then you have your stratosphere. Then you have your mesosphere, and then you have a thermosphere right here, and then you have exosphere right here. So now once we've understood the basic structure of the ozone and its layers, now we're going to understand what are the causes of this ozone layer depletion. So ozone is basically majorly present in the stratosphere, and it has been protecting the earth from the harmful radiations like the UV radiations, which have been emitted by the sun, as well as protecting us from some intercelestial bodies that might just fall on the earth and cause hazardous effects on the creatures that have been living on the earth. So the basic two causes of ozone layer depletion include the use of chlorofluorocarbons, and the second one is the increase in the level of methane or carbon dioxide. Now, chlorofluorocarbons, the major you can say resources of the major emissions of these chlorofluorocarbons come from your refrigerators as well as your air conditioners. And what actually happens is, if you try to refer to this diagram right here, the chlorofluorocarbons are released into the environment by industries that rises up to the stratosphere where the ozone is actually present. As I told you, this is the second layer after troposphere. And then it has risen up where here the sunlight is going to break up this chlorofluorocarbon and it's going to release chlorine. And this chlorine is going to then react with your ozone and it destroys the ozone. And then once your ozone has been converted, so basically it converts this ozone into oxygen plus some nascent oxygen molecules, and this is an irreversible reaction. That is, now oxygen and nitrogen oxygen together cannot form ozone under these conditions. So once your chlorine has broken down your ozone here, it cannot be formed again. That is how the ozone is completely depleting from the atmosphere. It cannot be replenished back because this process is only one way. This is only one way process. It does not revert back. It's not reversible. So this is how the amount of ozone that has been present in the atmosphere is depleting on and on. And a similar mechanism is also followed when you have the rise of methane and carbon dioxide, or say oxides of nitrogen and sulfur is also having the same kind of a process in which they are breaking down the ozone. The constituents may be different. That is, the breakage of ozone might be into different constituents, but this process remains the same. The sunlight is going to break it up, and then it forms different chemical compounds which do not again they cannot form ozone again. So this is how ozone is continuously depleting, and since there is no way out to replenish this ozone, it's continuously depleting. It's a one-way process. And now effects would be that, since, as I already told you earlier as well, that ozone was protecting us from the UV rays that were coming on the earth due to the sun and its radiations. These UV rays will reach the earth, and then it may cause skin burns. And secondly, this skin burns may also turn to the chances of cancer. Skin burn is a very primary situation. It's a very primary consequence. When you have an increased exposure to such kind of radiations, then you might also develop cancer, mainly skin cancer, but there might be other sorts of cancers as well. So yes, first is your skin ailments that you get, maybe skin burns, it may be cancer. Then you have disturbed life cycle of plants, because then these radiations are also going to affect the growth of plants. And yes, destruction of marine life as well, because then these radiations are going to reach the water, and definitely they are going to change the constitution of the water as well, which might not suit the marine life then. So it has a lot of effects, as well as effects, in fact, on not only human beings but also on all sorts of life that exists on the earth. Now let's move on to the next question, which says a relative density of silver is 10.8. The density of water is 10 to the power 3 kg per meter cube. And what is the density of silver in SI units? So before we actually find out what is the density of silver in SI units, we first need to understand the basic formula of density, which is nothing but mass divided by volume. Also, keep in mind the units that are using here is in SI unit system. That is your meter. The mass is going to be in kg, and the volume is going to be in meters per cube. And that's how your density comes out to be kilogram per meter cube, right? So now we can move on to the calculation part. Now here the relative density of the silver is given to us to be 10.8, and then the relative density of silver is also given to be density of silver over the density of water. This is the formula for the relative density of silver. So the density of silver is nothing but a relative density of silver into the density of water that has been given to us to be 10 to the power 3. So this makes it 10.8 into 10 to the power 3 kg per meter cube. The only thing that you need to remember is the formula of relative density, which is the density of that particular object whose relative density is given to us divided by the density of water, which is always fixed. That is 10 to the power 3 kg per meter cube. Now let's move on to the next question, which says give reasons which division among plants have the simplest of organisms, and why do gymnosperms and how do gymnosperms and angiosperms differ from each other? Okay, two parts. We'll take them one by one. The first part, the answer to the first part is the division amongst the plants which have simplest organisms, no complexities, are thallophytes. Those are thallophytes, are the simplest organisms amongst the plants divisions. And then how do you differentiate between gymnosperms and angiosperms is, I have tabulated the difference between the two of these. And this way you can easily remember these differences as well. It's always better to tabulate things to make them more concise, and then you can easily remember these things as well. So first we'll talk about the angiosperms versus gymnosperms. So angiosperms are flowering plants, whereas gymnosperms are non-flowering plants. Then seeds are enclosed within the ovaries in angiosperms, whereas seeds are exposed to the surface of the leaves, cones, or scales in gymnosperms. In angiosperms, these plants are seasonals, whereas gymnosperms are evergreen, that is, they are flowering throughout the year. Then you have angiosperms which have a triploid, whereas gymnosperms that have a haploid. And then your leaves are flat in angiosperms, whereas the leaves are like needles with scales in case of gymnosperms. Angiosperms have cotyledons, and gymnosperms do not have cotyledons. Angiosperms are also called hardwood plants, whereas gymnosperms are softwood plants. This is a difference between the wood that has been obtained from these two types of species of plants. Then you have angiosperms, which rely on animals for pollination, whereas gymnosperms rely on the wind for pollination. That is the further reproduction and the further growth of these plants at different places. And then you have, when you talk about the structure of the flowers of gymnosperms as well as angiosperms, you have a stigma and a style present in the angiosperm, whereas only stigma and styles are absent in gymnosperms. Then you have a discrete archenogonia, which is present in angiosperms, which is archenogonia is absent in gymnosperms. Then you have a double fertilization taking place in your angiosperms, whereas the fertilization is only generative type in your gymnosperms. And yes, finally, angiosperms are the source of hardwoods like pharmaceuticals, timber, and fiber products, and the wood that has been used in for hardwood purposes like timber, which is used basically in furniture productions and pharmaceuticals, whereas in case of gymnosperms, these are the sources of softwoods, as we have already discussed, and they are like pines, fir, paper, and plywood. Plywoods and paper, they're the most commonly uses of these types of plants. And this image right here, these are your angiosperms. These are your angiosperms, and these are your gymnosperms. So if you have a closer look at them, the basic difference lies in the fact of what their structure is. These are like pines, cones, these are needle shapes, whereas these are not needle shapes, right? They are flat leaves. See, these are flat leaves, right? This is the basic difference. This is the basic point of identification between a gymnosperm and an angiosperm that you can easily differentiate. Now let's move on to the next question, which says why a person suffering once from smallpox cannot suffer from it again. And the B part says name one disease which has been associated with the attack of microbes on lungs. So basically, why does a person suffering once from smallpox cannot suffer from it again is that the development of immunity to smallpox. Memory cells are formed, and then the memory cells are attacking more vigorously and quickly if the microbe enters the body for the second time. Now, what this means is that when the first time the microbe had entered the body, since it was new to the body's defense mechanism or the immunity cells were not familiar with that kind of a virus. So the body was infected by the virus, and the person was suffering from all the effects that come along with smallpox, like fever and all these things. It was prominent. Why? Because the body was new to these effects. Now, once the body has known that this kind of a virus, when enters into the body, has this effect on the body, the second time when the virus is going to enter the body, now this time the memory cells know that the last time when the virus had attacked, what was the structure of the virus, how, what was the nature of the virus. So now they have a better defense mechanism. Now they know how to react, and they will quickly and vigorously stop or prevent the further development of this kind of a virus of smallpox into the body. So the defense mechanism, uh, this develops the auto defense mechanism for the second time when this virus is going to come into the body. And the second part was that name one disease which is associated with the attack of microbe on the lungs. So that disease is nothing but tuberculosis. It is affecting the lungs in a very adverse way. And some of the major symptoms that you have is regular bloody vomit. There is a vomit which is full of blood. And then you have fever and other things which are associated with tuberculosis as a disease. So now let's move on to the last question of the module, which says a child hears an echo from a cliff in 10 seconds after the sound from an animal is produced. Calculate the distance between the cliff and the child, taking the velocity of sound as 340 meters per second. So in this case, the formula that we're going to use for the echo is going to be 2d is equal to v into t, right? This d is the distance, and this v is the velocity by which the sound is traveling, and the t is the time taken to hear the sound back after the echo reverts back. So this distance d, that is the distance between the cliff and the child, can be calculated as v into t divided by 2. So v in this case is given to us to be 340 into 10, that is the time was 10 seconds to hear the echo from the cliff by the child, divided by 2 gives us to be the answer to be 1700 meters. So with this, we come to the end of the module. I hope I was able to deliver the concepts to you, and the concepts and the fundamentals were clear to you now, and you will be able to apply them too. Yes, we'll meet in the next module. Till then, keep learning, keep growing. Thank you for being a patient audience.